So, let's talk about Brazil. Right now, the country is kicking off one of its most ambitious projects in decades. We're talking about a bold attempt to completely reinvent its entire industrial base for the 21st century. And listen, this isn't just some boring policy paper. This is a massive, nation-defining bet on its own future. So let's dive right in. Now, the key word you're going to hear a lot is neo-industrialization. And you got to understand, we are not talking about just reopening old smokestack factories. No way. This is a total ground-up reimagining of what industry even means. It's a vision where sustainability isn't just a nice-to-have, an afterthought, it's the actual engine of growth. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the big picture, the why now. Then, we'll dig into the problem Brazil is facing. After that, we'll get into the plan itself, the NIB. We'll check out its three main battlegrounds, face a bit of a reality check, and finally, ask the big question. Is this really Brazil's moonshot? Okay, first up, Brazil's new industrial dream. So the big question is, why now? Right? Why is a massive industrial plan like this suddenly back on the table, not just in Brazil, but kind of all over the world? Well, to put it simply, the world has changed. I mean, dramatically. You think about it. The pandemic completely shattered our supply chains. Climate change is forcing this massive green transition. And, all the geopolitical tension is making countries everywhere rethink who they depend on. So in this new reality, having a strong, modern, and resilient industrial base, well, it's not a choice anymore. It's an absolute strategic necessity. All right, section 2, the fading factory floor. And this is key because to really get the ambition behind this new plan, you first have to understand the problem they're trying to fix. And that problem is decades of what's called deindustrialization. And just look at this chart. The scale of the decline it's just striking. Back in the mid-'80s, industry was almost half of Brazil's entire economy. Think about that, nearly 50%. Fast forward to today, and that share has been more than cut in half, down to around 20%. I mean, that's not just a number on a chart. That is a fundamental shift in the entire country's economic identity. And this right here shows you the consequence of that decline. What's happened is Brazil has become more and more reliant on exporting raw materials. Stuff you dig out of the ground or grow in a field, like soy and iron ore. But at the same time, it has to import all the really complex, high-value stuff that powers the modern world. We're talking everything from life-saving pharmaceuticals to the semiconductors in literally all of our phones. And that creates a huge strategic and economic vulnerability. So that brings us to the plan. How exactly is Brazil going to try and reverse this trend? The answer is a big, comprehensive plan called the Nova Indústria Brasil, or NIB for short. And at its absolute heart, the NIB is built on the idea we talked about, neo-industrialization. It's meant to be a clean break from the past. The whole thing is focused on three main pillars: building a green economy, jumping headfirst into the digital revolution, and making sure that the benefits are actually shared across society. And look, this isn't just talk. They're putting serious money behind it. The plan is backed by a proposed investment of 300 billion reais. To put that in perspective, that's over 60 billion US dollars. And this money is going to be channeled through national development banks to really try and kickstart this whole transformation. Okay, so a plan this massive has to be focused, right? You can't do everything at once. So we can really break the NIB down into three core strategic areas. Let's call them battlegrounds. These are the areas where Brazil believes it has a real shot to compete and even win on the global stage. Battleground number 1, the green transition. The idea here is to leverage Brazil's incredible natural advantages. Take, for instance, its massive hydropower capacity. By using that, Brazil could potentially produce some of the world's cheapest green hydrogen, which is a super critical fuel for the future. And this isn't just about their own energy needs, it's about positioning Brazil to be a major player in the global shift to a green economy. All right, battleground number 2 is the tech frontier. Remember what we said about depending on high-tech imports? Well, this is the proposed answer. The plan aims to build up a national health industry so you don't have a repeat of future vaccine shortages. And it wants to make a really serious play in semiconductors to cut down that reliance on foreign chips. At the end of the day, it's about shifting from being just a consumer of technology to being a creator of it. And the third front, the third battleground, is all about sovereignty. What does that mean? It means securing control over the resources that are absolutely critical for the 21st century. For example, Brazil has huge reserves of strategic minerals. We're talking lithium, rare earths. Instead of just digging them up and exporting the raw materials, the plan is to build the entire supply chain right there, at home. That way, Brazil captures way more of the value and, crucially, isn't dependent on other countries for the basic building blocks of modern tech. Okay, so let's get to the reality check. A 300 billion real plan targeting the biggest challenges of our time. It sounds amazing on paper, right? But let's be honest, Brazil has tried ambitious plans before. For this to actually work, it means confronting some very old and very, very stubborn hurdles. Which leads to the big question, the one that experts, investors, and everyday citizens are all asking. It's a simple one, but it's profound. What could actually stop this from working? Well, when you talk to the experts, they pretty consistently point to 4 major roadblocks. You've got these big structural issues, like a slow, bureaucratic government and this huge gap between university research and what industry actually needs. And then you have the practical challenges, like where do you get the long-term funding and how do you train up a huge, highly skilled workforce? And this chart, wow, this chart perfectly illustrates that first hurdle we just mentioned. In Brazil, something like 80% of researchers, we're talking people with PhDs, are in universities. Only 20% are in industry. In a lot of other advanced economies, that ratio is completely flipped. And this isn't just some academic statistic. It's a massive barrier. It makes it so much harder to turn a brilliant idea from a lab into an actual product that people can buy. So that brings us to our last section. Is this a nation's moonshot? Because when you really step back and you put the incredible ambition of this plan right next to these deep-seated historical challenges, you start to realize this is way more than just another government program. The Nova Indústria Brasil plan, it really is a national moonshot. It's an all-or-nothing attempt to fundamentally change Brazil's entire role in the global economy, to go from being a supplier of raw materials to a creator of green, digital, high-value solutions. The stakes just couldn't be any higher. And so, ultimately, the success of this whole grand division really comes down to this one question. Can Brazil successfully bridge that gap between its enormous potential and its historical hurdles to become a real green, digital, and industrial power in the 21st century? I mean, the country has the resources, it has the talent, and now it has the plan. But can it finally overcome those structural challenges that have held it back for so long? Answering that question is going to define not just the next few years, but maybe the country's entire future.